and welcome back to the All Right Talk Show. This week, I am having a chat with James Stevens from Fairmile Developments. James has had his fair share of experience in property so far, from flips to new builds to large commercial conversions, and here he is to share it all. James, thanks for coming on the show. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having me, Shane.
Yeah, absolutely welcome. So, yeah, tell us a bit about yourself and your company and what you do.
So I've been in property about 7 years now, but I'd say 5 of those have been doing it properly, and 2 of them were doing it for ourselves. So kind of got into it by mistake, in terms of, you know, my wife and I needed a house, and we found a great plot, and so we built a house. So that just happened out of necessity. And then a year after that, she needed a new dancing school, so we found a commercial building and did a big commercial conversion on that. And then that kind of just led naturally into doing it kind of pretty much full time from then on.
Awesome, and we'll definitely talk about that commercial conversion later, because you had a lot of difficulties with that, didn't you?
Oh yeah, it's an absolute nightmare. I mean, in terms of going from 0 to 1,000,000 miles an hour, it was intense, but it's done now. It's the kind of thing, like everything, with hindsight is wonderful. At the time, you don't realize what you're getting into until you look back at it and you see how crazy you were.
Yeah, 100%. So you said you accidentally got into property developing then. Was that so when you did your first project, which was your own home, did you just love that experience and that's why you said, oh, I'd like to do this sort of full time?
Well, it kind of started 2007. I started a CGI company, so I've still got that. So computer generated imagery for architects and developers and stuff. So I had years of experience of working with architects, other developers, and seeing plans all the time, working with plans, making adjustments, things like that. So this was kind of a lateral step. It wasn't like a completely different field I didn't know anything about. It was kind of, so I knew the basics, and then we needed a house, so we built a house, and then we needed a dance school, so we just kind of did it without thinking about it. But then after that, it became, well, we've done the hard bit now. It's going to be piece of, it's going to be so easy to go to like buy to lets and flips and things like that. Were just going to be simple in comparison, and they were.
Yeah, I guess developments are definitely a lot harder than your buy to lets and your flips, aren't they? And they're a lot more intricate, but that's part of the fun process, I imagine. But
yeah, I mean, I like all aspects of property. That's why I don't have necessarily like a real tied in strategy of I will only stick to that, because I kind of like learning different strategies, different techniques, things like that. I really enjoy the whole art of learning the craft, rather than just saying, this is my niche, this is only what I stick to, this is only what I do.
I love that, because I think that's very diversified and not kind of pin yourself down to, as you said, the one strategy, because there's no one size fits all sort of thing, is there? So
yeah, well, let's face it, in the current market, you've got to be pretty nimble anyway. You can't necessarily have the if it ain't broke don't fix it mentality, because you need to be ahead of the game at the moment, rather than waiting for it, waiting for things to go wrong and then having to jump ship really quickly.
That's right. And that's kind of like, I feel that's like the very entrepreneurial mindset you have there, for sure.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah, love it. Cool. So where would you say you learnt the skills to become a property developer? Would you say that was on the job, or did you do any courses or any training, read books or anything like that?
Well, I read books. I had a Home Builders Bible, which was like a book like that, which was amazing in terms of like everything, like when we did our own house, of everything A to Z of building a house effectively. I haven't done any formal training, but where we were lucky is the first couple of, well, the first project we did with self-build mortgage, but because it's a self-build mortgage, they're not sort of heavy on what experience do you have, all of that kind of thing, because they know a lot of people are going to be in the same boat starting out. And the commercial conversion, we were lucky enough to do that with cash. So once again, we didn't have someone breathing down our neck of what's your experience, but within those we created experience. So when we then went on to secured like development finance and things like that, we could say, well, here's a portfolio of stuff we've already done.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That, and like, you probably find that there is a lot more people out there as well that accidentally, like in your position, accidentally probably stumbled into developments because they started on their own home first. I was listening to another podcast, can't remember who it was, but they were doing barn conversions and they lived out in the countryside. So they wanted to buy a barn and redo it into a house and have like a barn type house, and then they actually like enjoyed it. So then they started to buy up barns, redo them and sell them on, and that's how they got into like barn conversion developments.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, it's the same with like buy to lets and stuff. I would imagine a load of people get into it because they become accidental landlords. In terms of they sell their house but keep the old one, and then that kind of trickles and then starts the ball rolling. I would imagine quite a lot of people end up doing that rather than waking up one day and say, I want to be a property developer, and then study, and then put all the theory into practice.
Yeah, that's kind of like myself. That's what I well, it was a long process. It was a couple of years of like, I'd like to get into property, but don't know how or when or where. And the more I talked about it, the more I spoke to others about it, and the more and then I come across books and network with people, and that's kind of how I knew I wanted to do it. And then I kind of grew a passion for it, and then it's kind of like, yeah, I just love it. I love the fact of like, I love the whole idea of building things that weren't there before.
Yeah,
just completely, and obviously conversions as well. They excite me as well. But that's why I wanted to get you on to talk about this stuff.
Well, anything where you create something out of nothing is always exciting, I always think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. Cool. So, are you keen to share some numbers with us?
Yeah, can do.
GDVs and with flips. Like, what's been, let's say, for instance, your most profitable project? So maybe a project you might have break even on, unless you haven't broken even on a project, or maybe you've lost on.
Yeah, no, I can do the full spectrum. I've lost money as well, so
I'd love it.
There's no point of always being like, oh, property development's so easy. I look at made millions and it's so easy, because it really isn't as easy as people selling courses and things like that tend to make out. It can be very up and down. So I'll start with the loss. The loss was the first flip that we did after the commercial conversion. So that was bought through an estate agent, and you got to bear in mind, up until that point, everything we'd done had been for ourselves, so we didn't need to worry so much about, what are the margins in this, because we just did it for us. So we bought a property that, we listened to the estate agent's appraisal of what it'd be worth when it was done. All of that side, basically listen to all the gump that they give you, and the final selling price was considerably lower than what he said it would be. Even though there had been comps at the time, I wasn't kind of thinking in terms. Nowadays I work everything out on price per square foot. What are all the comps? What are the size of those properties? If they're twice the size, then of course they're going to sell for a lot more than the 3-bed 2 doors down. All of that side of it, I wasn't really doing. I was literally just going, well, on the same road, there's a 3-bed that sold for 370. We can get 370, not realizing that I was like, a third bigger than the property we've got, and things like that. So on the first one, we ended up losing 20,000. Wasn't the end of the world, but obviously not particularly a nice experience. And I don't think you learn more than the mistakes where you lose money, because although mistakes are fantastic in theory, and hearing other people's mistakes, when you do it yourself, it's like you're scorned, and you become so hard on yourself after then. That was the first one. We lost money on that one, and then we did other flips after that, which were fine. Some made a few grand, some made sort of 10, 15, 20 on. And then we kind of went into heavy conversion, heavy refurb. So we bought a bungalow, which was like a 90 square meter bungalow. We knocked down pretty much all of it, apart from a few remaining walls, turned it into a 180 square meter chalet bungalow. So we doubled the existing size. And we bought that for 460, spent 175 on it. Well, that one at the moment we've got refinanced and we're just letting it out, just waiting, just waiting for the market to pick up a bit. But it was valued at I think this was pre-COVID though, right last February, it's valued at 725, I think. So
wow.
not the end of the world, but not the most amazing thing. But since then, kind of been honing the skills and honing it's. I find more it's about honing the deal in the first place, because I was listening or reading a book, I remember a few years ago, and the advice was, if you buy a deal, it's got to make you money when you buy the deal. So you could buy it on day one, sell it on day one, and make some profit automatically. Have money in it if you refurb it, and then so at every stage you can have money in the deal. And what I was doing, like I guess a lot of people do, is day one when they buy the deal, there's no money in it, so they couldn't sell it again straight away and make a few quid. Whereas now, all the deals that we do, because we're getting, well, usually because we're buying with cash, you can work really quickly. We're securing really fantastic deals, which we know next day we can go and sell for 20 grand more. And there are buyers waiting for them. For example, an HMO we've bought recently was on the market for 175. They had an offer for 165 on the table, but their bridging product on the property was literally about to come to an end because they'd faffed around for so long, like doing planning and stuff. It had planning to turn into a 6-bed HMO. And we came along, and because we bought it in 9 days, 7 working days, we bought the property in, and we secured it at 135. Sorry, 138. So up for 175, had an offer for 165. We bought it at 138 because we could move. So we knew we could bung that straight into auction and sell it for 150, 155. And it's that kind of thing is, the safety is there now. It's like having a nice warm duvet. Like every time you have a blanket of safety over the numbers, you feel even more secure with the deal.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's you are right. It is working out your numbers from the start and making sure you get them solid, do as best job as you can at the beginning. And it's like, you're right. I'm sure that what you said, like if you can make money from the beginning, it's from the purchase of the house. If you make money from that stage and throughout the stages, throughout the process, then you're on to win it. And I'm sure property developer called John Howard said that. I'm reading his book.
That was it. It was John Howard.
Yeah.
Now you've said him, like I could picture his face, but I couldn't remember his name. Yeah, it was definitely John Howard. Yeah.
I'm currently reading his book at the moment. So for anyone listening, I think he's very overlooked in the property world because he doesn't have many. He's not really a big social media guy, which I suppose is kind of good in a way, but he's got some absolute gems. His books and everything, they're fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah, well, he's very straight talking, which is nice because he doesn't sugarcoat it and he doesn't BS with all the fantasy of it all. Yeah. But he's been around for years. He's got some very interesting stuff.
Definitely. And regards to like the training as well, he does training, I believe, once every couple of months, and his reason that he does it once every few months because he's honest. Like, I don't have the time to train, to be honest, and I train when I feel like it. So he's not one of these like property gurus.
Well, one of the ones that's done a couple of buy-to-lets and then they're making it their mission to sell courses and stuff. I call them the tele-evangelists of now. Because they are, aren't they? They go on and they sort of, make you think, oh, you can't do anything without me. Praise me. You need all the information. Don't do anything without me, and then sign you up to tens of thousands of pounds a year.
Yeah, absolute jokers. But yeah. So, what's been your most profitable one then? So, have you got the numbers on that one?
So, the most profitable at the moment is a deal that we've purchased. We did the planning. A lot of things have gone in our favor for this. So we purchased the property for 120,000 at the beginning of lockdown. we did planning to turn, it's a commercial, very large commercial building, and then we did planning to turn it into 4 flats and a large commercial ground floor. And what we didn't realize at the time, the numbers were good even at that point. What we didn't realize at the time is because the building is in a conservation area and is quite run down, we qualify for council grants covering 40% of the work.
Wow.
And that's grants, not repaid. And also council loan to do the remainder of the work with no interest, and no interest loan. Wow. We're just in the process of sorting that out with the council. But that one, we're looking at total spend for build and purchase and everything. We're looking at 250 because we're saving about 50 grand on the build cost through the grants. And then GDV is 450. So, you know, if you're doing it on terms of a profit per GDV, percentage per GDV, I mean, it's really good. I mean, I can't remember what else. It's about 42.5% on GDV or something like that. Something. Yeah. So, you know, that's a couple of £100,000 profit in that one. I kind of get more obsessed with the profit on GDV because after losing money, I just obsess about the more and more cushion rather than saying, oh, it's 50, you know, we're making £1 million profit, but it's 12% on GDV. I mean, that fills me with complete fear because if the market drops like 15%, you're out of pocket hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That 40% as well, that leaves you with so much room for things to go wrong. But the good thing is, you know, you've calculated it and things have paid out in your favor, and it's like it's absolute bonus that you can get grants from the government. That's awesome, and the councils, of course, and you know that leaves you with more profit, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a similar deal which we haven't got any help from, like, you know, grants or anything. So we bought 2 semis about 50 meters away from Swansea Central train station, right in the heart of the city. Right next to 6 meters away is a new 750 block, student block. It's going to be absolutely the dogs. So we bought these 2 semis for 80 grand each, and in one of them is a commercial unit, so we paid like absolutely peanuts in stamp duty for it. I think it was like a few £100 or something. We went into planning after we exchanged and purposely dragged out completion to the annoyance of the owner for 6 weeks. So we only owned the property for 2 weeks before we were granted planning to turn it into a 9-bed, 9 ensuite HMO. So in 2 weeks of owning the property, we had taken it from £160,000 up to a £250,000 value by owning it for 2 weeks. And then we're doing the refurb currently, and our Rick surveyor, who we work with on all of our stuff, and you know, on all the panels, all our lenders and stuff. I mean, he said we're looking at 4 to 420 when done. We're looking at a total spend of 230, and then we're looking at 4 to 420 when done. So we're looking at 170 to 190,000 equity just in that one HMO.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah.
And we're gonna be renting those rooms for almost £100 cheaper than the block opposite per month, and it'll be all really high end. So hopefully we should fill it up quite easily. Hopefully.
Yeah. Absolutely. With, you know, if the marketing's done right, which I'm sure it will be, and you know, £100 cheaper. Like what is the what's the current rental for the properties that are near to your property?
HMO comps. The really high end stuff, because there's quite a few Higgy houses. Have you heard of Higgy House?
I haven't, no.
They're like a super high end boutique HMO company that they've got a few in Swansea. I know they've got some in Bristol as well, but they're very local to us, and they're achieving like almost £600 per room per month. Wow. Bear in mind, this is Swansea. I mean, it is crazy really, because although you don't have the capital growth so much compared to, say, down here, Southampton, Portsmouth, the monthly rents are very, very similar. Like you pay £550 for a nice room with an ensuite in Portsmouth, yet the property costs you £600,000. So that's, I suppose it's the trade-off of, do you want the security of cash flow and not relying on capital growth, or do you want to take a punt on capital growth but with less cash flow? So we're hoping to rent ours for 5 to 525 per calendar month per room, and the block opposite, Theirs start 575 for a very small room per calendar month. I think they go up to about 750 for like a really big double room.
Perfect.
So expensive, really expensive.
But you can, people will, because I've thought that before when I've seen projects that other people have done and the rental they're getting in the certain areas. I'm like, how are you achieving that much? It's because the rooms look absolutely stunning. They've done a really good job. They're marketing it correctly, and well, because people want to live in nice places, that's how they're achieving that higher rent in maybe not so much like a higher rental area.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you've got to bear in mind that even in a city which doesn't have, say a lot of what's the best way to say it? Not money going around, but opportunity. Like you go to London, everyone's got a really high paid job and stuff. But even in the cities where you haven't got that, there are going to be people who have a good job, who are self-employed and make decent money, or want to live somewhere nice. You are always going to find that. So if you go to a city where there's not a lot of competition in terms of that higher end stock, you will find people. I mean, the Higgy house, I mean, they have waiting lists of people waiting for properties to come, for their next development to happen in these cities. So there is a demand for it. And especially with students, a lot of students, a lot of parents, wealthy parents are quite happy to pay extra for their sons and daughters to have a really nice place to stay or stay with friends in a really nice environment. They don't necessarily want them to just go into the very basic stock.
Yeah, I agree. So there's, it is the wealthy parents that they want the best for their children. So they don't want them to live in like squalor, as you call it.
Well, very lucky, because when it was all my time for all of that, nobody got any help. Everyone just lived in squalor. So
get what you're given.
Yeah, exactly.
But you are, and something that you mentioned earlier, actually, I always, whenever I speak to other investors or property developers, I always ask them, what do you want to achieve? Like, is it capital growth or is it high rental yields? And if they say the capital growth, then it's always down south where they seem to be investing. And if it's high rental yields, it's always like, the northwest or the northeast, because you can pick up, properties for like 60 even 50, actually 50 to 100 grand, and you'll get like up to like £700 per month in certain areas. But whereas London, for instance, or I'm not sure what Southampton's like, if it's similar to London, but you pick up, let's say, for instance, a house for like 200 grand with the same rental yield, and but the rental yield not as in the percentage, but the amount you're getting per month, and it's just, the rental yield's a lot lower then.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because to me, kind of, I suppose it's whether you want to take the punt on the capital growth. And I know, you have them for 20 years, you will always see a rise, but that is still a gamble compared to cash. Cash is king. If you've got a property that's cash flowing straight away and you've always got it full, that money's happening. That's real money that's coming in every month. And the capital growth is paper money effectively until the moment you sell that property or refinance it and keep refinancing it. It's still theoretical money. That's right. Rather than real cash, isn't it?
That's right. Let's say cash flow is king, isn't it?
Yeah. So
100%. Yeah. So okay, moving on to just some of the challenges you've had, because I got in touch with you because of how transparent you were when you were putting on social media some of the challenges you've had, and just how it's not easy with conversions and developments. And I love that, and that's what I would like to you to share with us, with the some of the major challenges you've had from like the start to finish of a project.
Oh, loads. So finding decent builders that turn up when they say they're going to turn up, I think, like all the kind of usual stuff, but also like when you're first starting out, it's a very big industry to try and like capture all the knowledge. Like, so for example, when we're doing the first conversions, like all the building regs and everything like that, they're very quick to overlook, because you kind of think like, oh, just get a builder in to do this, or just want to put a wall up here, and you don't sort of think about all things like building regs and stuff like that. So that can kind of unpick very quickly when and building control comes around and said, no, double pink board on that wall, you know, I want 60-minute fire, you know, and then that throws a spanner in the works and things like that. So it's kind of that's when I started, that's kind of the issue as I was having, is trying to process all of the different things required on a building site. But nowadays the issues are things more like trying to get services in and waiting a ridiculous amount of time for, like, you know, for the utility companies to come and fit surfaces and things like that. It's not so much of an issue nowadays, because in terms of problems, because we've kind of been through a lot of the issues before, so we know of them before we get to them, and we can address them. Nowadays we're kind of doing far more planning gain stuff, so it's more being about playing within the rules of, you know, planning policy and things like that, rather than on the site, because my business partner Martin runs the sites day to day, whereas I'm more kind of doing more of the officey stuff and the behind the scenes, getting the planning and getting the uplift side of things.
Is Martin the project manager, would you say then, or like the site manager?
Yeah, so Martin's running the sites. He's the boots on the ground, so to speak. And although I get involved now with all the design work, because all of our projects we do CGIs and things for, so I do all the CGIs, all the planning side of it, you know, and the marketing and that side of it, and he does the you know, the project managing day to day.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's all brilliant that you've got someone who can take half the workload and you do the other half, and I think that's good to have a business partner that does that. And is Martin someone that you've known for a while, or is that someone you found online, or?
Well, we've known each other for just over a year, and we've worked together for pretty soon after that. And I really like working in as a team. Before this, I'd done everything by myself, and it's kind of quite lonely in a way, because everything falls on your shoulders, and you're expected to be the master of all, jack of none, master of all, pretty much. When you're by yourself, you know, you can't do it the other way around. You got to get it all right yourself. Whereas I quite like having people to bounce ideas off, and people to share responsibility with and share ideas with. Yeah, I really enjoy it personally.
Yeah, I agree. I like working with. Well, I've got a business partner too, and you know, I love working in a duo, because you just bounce ideas off each other. If something happens, it falls on both of you, and you got two minds to tackle it. You know, you got two sets of eyes to see things in properties, and you know, so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think, you know, because we do like 50-50 on like the projects we work on, just to us, we do 50-50 and stuff, and I think it's well worth, you know, I'd rather have the comfort and enjoyment of working with a partner making less money than just being like money, and that's the answer to it all.
Well, the way I said to my business partners, like, we could be on our own, and then it can take us longer to do our own individual projects, or we could be together and smash through, you know, the double the projects then, because there's two of us, so we are in theory getting the same amount of money as if we were to do it on our own, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, it's kind of like a false economy, isn't it, to say like, no, I'm going to do it by myself because I want the most money, like you say. Then you can take on half the amount because there's only one of you, whereas
exactly.
You know, absolutely.
Exactly. So do you want to talk a little bit about the conversion you did for, is it your wife's dance studio, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So it was a Salvation Army hostel, but it also had 9 offices in it. It's a really big building right in the centre of Southampton, literally a stone's throw from the football stadium. And we bought it at auction, and we got it for a fantastic price, because it had 3 PD conversions to residential overturned by the council due to it's next to a metal recycling yard. So they just said, well, nobody wants, you know, noise, pollution, light, everything was against the PD change. So no resi developers were interested. So it's just myself and a couple of guys who I think wanted to start a gym. and they dropped out really quickly, and then it was just me. And so we picked it up at a fantastic price, having already spoken to the council about changing it to a dance school. And councils very rarely say no to more community space. So if you're coming along and saying, I want to create more space for the community to use, they're like, yeah, fantastic, go for it. So we already kind of knew that was the change of use was fine. So we got that. We knew we had to open for the start of her next term, which was the beginning of September that year. And by the time we had the planning granted, we had basically just over 12 weeks to transform this property, from a youth hostel and offices into 3 big dance studios and massive reception area and changing rooms and all sorts. And it was an epic task, but it had to be done because that was the time, it had to be ready for the new term.
Oh, amazing. And I'm guessing, well, there was obviously a load of challenges within that too. So what was your biggest challenge in that? Was that like working with builders, or at this point had you already had your own build team that you work with?
So we used the builders that we used to build our house the year before. Because they had about sort of 10, 15 guys. So we used those guys. So I was project managing them. They only did like the structural side of the changes to the building, but everything else, I managed the subbies, so all the plasterers, everything, painters, everything in between, because there's so much to it. So we had like, obviously electrician, plumbers, but then you've got like sound equipment, light equipment, all the alarms, because you need, because it's going to be a public building, all the fire regs. So you need like all the guys to come in and do put all fire extinguishers everywhere, signs everywhere, all of that, sign writers, it was just a massive list of people to arrange. Like when you do a flip, it's literally just like, oh yeah, get the sparky in, oh yeah, first fix is done, okay, get the plaster in, oh it's skimmed, right, get second fix in, right, it's done, like just paint it. I mean, whereas this, you had like a list of people like that of different trades that had to be like all organized, and they were all on top of one another. So you had this constant, like everyone getting peed off with everyone else because they're trying to do something, but so and so's trying to paint above them, but they need to put a light in, but they, all this kind of thing. But unfortunately, it was just the way it had to be to get it done in that time frame. As I said, it was more like DIY SOS than it was like a conventional build site.
Because normally what you'd have is a schedule of works, right, and everything will be planned out accordingly to suit with the times of people. Because so and so can't start till so and so's done. If so and so doesn't show up for work that day, then so and so cannot start the day after. So I'm guessing because you had such a limited time frame, it was literally like SOS, and it was all systems go, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was literally saying to people, when are you available? And they'd say, I'm available on this date to this date. So you just go, yeah, fine, book it. Because you had no option to be like, them say like, oh, I can start, beginning of September. And you'd be like, oh, yeah, that's okay. Didn't have any of that. So if they said, I'm available on this day, you just said, yes, that's fine. And they just had to work around the other people because it had to get done.
Yeah,
hectic.
Yeah, that's crazy. Did they understand that though? Did you speak to some of the tradies and say like, sorry guys, but like, because we need to get this done, this is the reason why, like, you've got the decorators trying to work over the sparkies and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I explained explained it all to them to start with about this is what we're trying to do. And I tried to make it as be as accommodating as possible, but things like I would bring beers in and stuff on Fridays, just little things like that to show your appreciation of people like busting a gut for you.
Yeah, no, that's nice. And I suppose it's the little things that like bring, because that's what I would do. I'd bring in like beers or whatever they want, just to make that their time kind of worth it, and the little incentives, isn't it, for them to come to work. But yeah, no, that's nice. But it's good that you got it done in the end, and it's it's brilliant. So would you say that's your favorite project that you've done, or have you got a favorite project?
Yeah, I'd say in terms of result, that's my favorite, because it's a product which everyone's still, well, not right now because obviously everything's shut, but pre-COVID and stuff, it was, it's being used by the community all the time. So to me, it was fantastic to create a building which a lot of people are getting so much use and so much enjoyment out of, and memories and stuff like that. You don't necessarily get that out of like a standard house which you just sell on or what have you, or rent to people. Whereas this is, this is a building where, when we opened in 2016, you had kids coming that are still there now, and they've gone from like 5 to 10, and they've like 5 years of their life of memories of doing dancing every week and things like that. It's a bit more, there's a bit more to it than other than just doing a flip.
Yeah, and that's the whole definition of giving back to the community, isn't it? And I think that's really nice. You can see something being used, and that's probably essentially you've left a bit of a legacy there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you consider, although it was previously a Salvation Army offices, for years before that, it'd just been used as a dumping ground, because the owner who was trying to get these PD rights to Resi, they just used it as a store. They just, it had mold all over the ceiling and everything like that. So it's just used as a dumping ground for all the stuff for all their properties that they managed. And so when you take something that's unloved and then turn it into something not only that's loved, but loved, but enjoyed by the community, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, well done to you on that front anyway. Long-term plans with developments then, or are you going to be in developments until you retire? Are you planning to retire early? You're building your wealth in developments. What's your long-term goals?
So I'd like to do more like ground up development stuff. I mean, I've got planning stuff on the go in terms of planning uplift projects, but I'm either in the process of selling them or plan to sell them when they're done, just simply because the margins are there for a builder who does it themselves, but for me, like outsourcing the build, there's not the margins I'd want, so I'm just selling them on. So it would be nice to find some stuff where there's decent margins, and probably it'd be nice to find stuff more locally, but it's so difficult down south to find anything decent because everyone's all over everything. So I'd like to do more developments, like doing the commercial conversions because they're really good. But I also enjoyed, the main thing I enjoy is planning. So planning uplift, I enjoy buying something, usually unconditionally, because although everyone talks about, just get an option for £1, just get an option for £1, in the real world, you talk to people and they're like, no, I just want the money. Well, they're not prepared to sit there and wait for you to take a punt. And it's an option to purchase. It's not even a contractually obliged to purchase it. So we're finding we have to buy a lot of stuff unconditionally, but we've done our research before we buy it in terms of, we've talked to our planning consultant. When we go into it, we're 99% sure we're going to achieve what we want to achieve on that plot or within that building. And so the planning side I really enjoy, to be honest.
Love it. And just off the back of that, with the planning, you've mitigated the risk of any planning being denied because you've done your due diligence beforehand, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean we've got 100% success rate of planning so far in probably a dozen applications. Got 100% success rate.
That's amazing. Yeah. Let's keep that 100% success rate up then.
Well, yeah, it's about being calculated. There's a difference, isn't there, between being reckless and being calculated, and taking a punt when you're being reckless. I went to an auction a few years ago, and it was another dancing school actually that we were trying to buy before we did this one. So it would have been quite a few years ago. And if the guy had just read the legal pack, he would have known there was covenants in there to stop the land being developed. And I knew that he was trying to buy it to put flats on it. And he paid, it was up for 300 guide, and they reckoned it would go for about 320, 330, and he paid 680 for it.
Thinking, my God.
Yeah, think like him and another guy were fighting for it. And then the guy was absolutely like stumped that he couldn't do planning on it and didn't get anything. So he just turned it into a car lot, and it's just like left as a car lot now, which is barely ever open. So he spent like nearly 700 grand on a useless car lot, which doesn't even really open. You just think, you just think that's totally reckless, just to be like, oh yeah, I'll just do that. There's flats next door, I'll just build flats, without doing any research. And that's crazy, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, he'll hopefully, well, I'm not hopefully, he probably is regretted that decision.
Yeah.
Of a car like that, as you said, doing nothing. Wow, that's absolutely crazy.
Cool, yeah. Well, that's awesome plans. Really like it. So, just moving on then. Finally, advice for others that are wanting to get into developments or just even the property world.
Definitely. When I say I haven't had formal education, I'm not saying don't have education. Totally educate yourself. But my point I'm making is there's so much free content, like on all of these Facebook groups, on YouTube, Instagram, following other people, and more people are being quite transparent about the experience. It's like, yes, you do get the people who are standing in front of a flash car just making out how easy it is when it's not. But you do there's so many people now that quite openly share their day-to-day problems on site and things. That they're sharing so much free information. My advice would be kind of just to soak that up to start with, know your area, but also don't feel confined to your area just because it's local, because there's not always great deals where you live. Like where I live, I would really struggle to find corkers, hence why I sort of invest in other areas. But but still, it's important to know that area inside out, or work with someone local, or someone who it's their patch. And that's kind of how me and Martin met, in terms of he knows the area, it's his patch. So he was my gateway to kind of finding opportunities in that area. So yeah, I mean, in terms of starting out, that would be my advice: is soak it all up and just live on the planning, not planning, the portals, the Rightmoves, the Zooplas, and things like that. Check them every day. Look for opportunity, because it's not always presenting itself. Like all of the stuff we bought, none of it had presented itself in terms of, the blurb that was listed. Nobody was saying, oh, perfect for conversion, or could be an HMO. That wasn't said. It's about seeing the opportunity and thinking, oh, we could put an extension on the back, and then we could do X, Y, and Z. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll speak to a local planning consultant, just get an initial, or go on the planning website and look at comparables on the same street and say, well, 2 doors down, they did exactly the same. That was approved, on the same road. It's really about getting inside like the deal and really fleshing it out, rather than just taking everything at face value.
Yeah, so by the sounds of it, just doing something that everyone else is not doing, by looking at properties that don't have the key generic words, investment opportunity, blah, 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 and kind of looking at the project yourself. And then obviously, if you think there's a scope for potential, then it's obviously going onto the planning portal websites then. And is that planning portal? Is that the website? Is it planning portal? Is that the one that you use?
Yeah, so I mean, I use Nimbus Maps, which is allows you to, it's kind of like Land Insight, where it allows you to have all that information at your fingertips. But you can quite easily go on to whatever your local council website is, go onto their planning, just search for example, Southampton City Council planning, and then you would be able to go into there's maps, so you can see a planning map, so you can see, like, the road you're looking at, all the dots will show, well, this house planning for this, planning for this, planning for this. So that's all of free information available. But also the HMO registers, because like the HMOs we've got that are in Article 4 areas that we still took the risk on, we went on, we looked at the HMO register. I physically plotted, I printed out a map of the road and plotted where each one of those HMOs were around us, because we knew we couldn't have more than a 10% threshold of HMOs within a 50-meter radius of any property, you see. So you have to do some homework. You have to like properly get involved with it, spend some time on it. And then we knew, well, within 50 meters of this property, there are no other HMOs, or there's one other HMO, so we can do it. Things like that. It's really getting inside of it, rather than just, as I say, taking everything at face value.
Yeah, I love that, and it just goes to show that if you do your proper research and you do put in the work like you've done, like, so I don't know anyone that's actually done that personally, but that, then you can get far by doing creative things like that, just doing your homework, like you said. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent, James. Cool. So just brings us to the last part of the show now, where I give you 3 random questions, so unproperty related. And yeah, just answer them as you will. So question 1 is, what is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie, Goldeneye.
Oh, well, yeah.
Because it was the first James Bond that I saw at the cinema when I was like 11 years old, and it rocked my world. And I'd probably say that's my favorite movie. Odd one, I know.
Yeah, that's so random. Like, 'cause I never hear anybody say that a James Bond movie is their favorite movie, even though like James Bond is probably one of my favorite franchises of all time. I'm a huge Bond fan.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, GoldenEye is an absolute gem. I love it.
Well, and it led to GoldenEye on the N64, which was like incredible. Everyone it had a whole thing about it for a few years. That when I was a kid, it was just amazing. Everyone loved it. So
I think you'll agree with this one. GoldenEye is probably the best first-person shooter of all time.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I'm saying. People probably spent hundreds of hours playing that with all their friends, sat around a tiny TV of the 90s.
Yeah, I love it. I've still got it, and you know what? I need to. You know what I've actually got as well. Just a side note on this. I've got GoldenEye on my phone. I downloaded an emulator, and I can play it on my Android device.
Oh, that's incredible! I've got an Android, so you'll have to tell me where you get that from.
I'll message you after the show. Cool. Right. So moving on. What is your favorite destination?
I like Ibiza because not in terms of like the rave scene, but we went there for our honeymoon, and I just love the vibe of the island, like in terms of like that kind of really chilled out, it's great food there, it's great like atmosphere, bars, but also like the vibe of the whole island is awesome. I love it. That's definitely my favorite destination.
Yeah, Ibiza's a really cool place, and you know what, when people say Ibiza, it's, if I'm honest, like as much as I love the clubbing scene there, it's not something that the clubbing scene that a lot of people go there for. You're right, it's actually like such a beautiful place, and you go to the other side of the island, and some of the beaches are completely empty because nobody knows about them apart from the locals.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much color to the island, like you say. Like you've got Ibiza Old Town, which is like all the history, and then you can go over to like San Antonio Moorside, and it's all like more happening and everything in between. It's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, great place, beautiful. And then question 3, finally, name something that grinds your gears.
Oh, something that grinds my gears. What, people or things?
Well, anything. I do this part of the show just so you can get something off your chest.
People who are late for stuff, because I'm very kind of military operation about stuff. I do everything to the time, and I'm very. If I say I'm going to call you at 10 a.m., I'm there at 10 a.m. Things like that, and I find it's so unprofessional when you deal with people, especially when they want something from you, and they say they arrange something with you and they're late, or they don't bother turning up, or anything like that. It just reflects so badly in every aspect, professionally and personally. I think it's not a great trait.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it says a lot about the person if they're not going to show up on time for things. If you've got a prearranged time, unless something major has happened, or they've got a really valid excuse, like they're in an accident or whatever, then there's no excuses really if you've got something booked in.
No, especially if you're giving someone an opportunity, and that's the way they show their appreciation, by being late. It's
100%. And just for the record, for everyone listening, James did show up dead on time today. So he's a man of word.
That would look embarrassing, wouldn't it?
He turned up at 5 past, so not good enough. No, all good. Yeah, amazing, James. So how can people get in touch with you then if they want to chat?
Facebook. I'm on Facebook. You can look me up, or Fairmile Developments on Facebook, or go to fairmiledevelopments.com fairmiledevelopments.com, or you can get me James at fairmiledevelopments.com.
Perfect. James, you've been an awesome guest and an absolute pleasure to talk to. Thanks for coming on.
Brilliant. Thanks for having me, Shane.
You're very welcome. Right, that's been the All Right Talk Show. We'll see you next week for another guest. Ciao for now.